What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing who killed Lindsay Buziak. As I work hard and diligently on the Galactic Federation series, which is already becoming quite a headache, I decided to cover some more true crime in the meantime. I want to say first and foremost that I in no way, shape, or form mean for this video to be triggering to any of the family, friends, or loved ones of the deceased, and am merely putting it out for informational purposes only, and only with and in the interest of helping to keep the case fresh in people's minds, as it is still unsolved. This one has captivated me, guys, from the very moment I heard about it, and I still cannot wrap my head around what happened here or why. I am also more than likely going to turn comments off, and for that, I have my own reasons. With all that being said, let's just jump right in here. Lindsay Elizabeth Buziak was an up-and-coming real estate agent in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, who was really well-liked and making a name for herself among her peers in her field in general back in 2008. She was happy and proud of the accolades she was receiving among her fellow real estate agents, and she was in a serious relationship where all seemed to be well with a man named Jason Zuelo. Jason's family was very wealthy and extremely prominent in the community, and they owned several very successful real estate businesses. Lindsay's future was full of promise, and things were going really well and looking up for her. However, in February of 2008, tragedy would strike, and the unthinkable would happen, leaving Lindsay's loved ones in a desperate quest for answers and justice that still goes on to this day. At the time, Lindsay was mainly selling smaller real estate, which meant houses that sold for under $500,000. But something happened that not only surprised her very much, but also that made her think things were going to change for her for the better, and soon. In late January, she received a phone call from a number she wasn't familiar with and didn't have the contact in her phone for. She answered and was greeted by a woman who seemed to have been speaking in a very unfamiliar foreign accent. The woman said she was looking to buy a very expensive luxury home for her and her husband. The woman had a budget of over $1 million, which was much more than what Lindsay was used to dealing with. The woman also had very detailed specifications as to what she and her husband were looking for, and said that they were looking for a home that was all but ready to be moved into and set up. The woman also specified that it had to be within 15 to 20 minutes from town, and to have 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a separate quarters for their housekeepers within the home itself. The foreign woman stressed very much that she had no time to wait or waste and had to get started seeing properties right away. Lindsay was a bit suspicious and wondered how the woman had gotten her personal phone number, and she wasn't afraid to ask about it. The woman quickly replied that she had gotten it from one of Lindsay's former clients, and this was a little odd because normally the protocol was for a potential buyer to call the firm's number directly when they were looking to buy or sell real estate. She figured it was what it was, though, and she did try to contact the client the woman said had referred her to Lindsay and who had given her that number, but the client was on vacation at the time. No other clients of Lindsay's knew anything about the woman or how she could have gotten the number either. Lindsay had a decision to make, and despite feeling a bit uncomfortable, she thought the price tag was a bit intimidating and possibly out of her league. She was up for the challenge. She immediately went to work compiling a list of properties for the new wealthy client. She emailed a list of some suggestions to the client, and over the course of the next few days, she and the woman spoke over the phone at least 10 more times. They eventually decided on an upscale property in the posh suburb of Saanich. Lindsay was still a little nervous about the whole situation because she was a relatively junior employee at her firm, and it was so odd for someone to just call her cell phone and wanting to buy $1 million or more home. However, her boyfriend convinced her to help the woman because of the potential commission she would receive on such an expensive property. She and the woman were set to meet on Saturday, February 2nd, 2008 at 5:30 p.m. Now, some sources say that a man with a thick accent then called Lindsay and said that he was the husband and he would be meeting her alone. As I say at the end of this video, I did leave some stuff out because I couldn't fact check it well enough, and I don't want to put the wrong information in here to the best of my humble ability when using only YouTube as my source. To ease Lindsay's nerves a little bit, Jason said he would meet her in front of the residence and hang around outside to make sure everything was on the up and up after he dropped off some paperwork at a local shop that specialized in auto detailing. Lindsay simply referred to the foreign female client as the Mexican, and that's a quote. Some people took issue with the nickname, but I think that Lindsay just couldn't place the accent and thought maybe it sounded some sort of Spanish. I don't think she meant anything by it, but I didn't know her, so honestly, I don't know, but I don't see why it's been such a big deal or point of contention in the first place after what was done to Lindsay that day, so I'm just going to move on. Jason texted Lindsay saying, quote, "I'll come and meet you. I'll be there in 10 to 15 minutes or so," end quote, to which she replied, quote, "Okay, I'll see you in a bit. I've got to go. The Mexicans are here," end quote. As Lindsay got out of the car to greet her clients, Jason texted her one more time to tell her he was almost there. It read, quote, "Just a couple of minutes away," end quote. That text would never be opened and they wouldn't ever see one another again. The next time Jason saw his girlfriend, Lindsay Buziak, she would be deceased. As with all murder investigations, some of the details are a bit fuzzy and there are conflicting sources everywhere. So, like I said, I did my best to try and get the most accurate and sensible information for this video, and I apologize once again if any mistakes are made. Several witnesses would come forward later on and say that they saw Lindsay at the house that day with a woman who had short blonde hair and wore, quote, "a distinctive red dress," end quote. There was also a 6-foot-tall, well-dressed Caucasian man with the woman, and he had dark hair. Remember that nothing that they were doing was technically abnormal behavior. For a woman to say that she was going to come alone and bring her husband with her, or a man that said he's going to come alone and bring his wife, the woman did say she was looking for a property for her, she and her husband. Also, keep in mind, Lindsay knew that her own boyfriend was on his way to come and make sure everything was okay. She had that in the back of her head the whole time. I wouldn't feel much fear in that situation either, honestly. Jason Zuelo arrived at the house within seconds of Lindsay going inside, and he arrived with his friend. He didn't go into the house, though, and he didn't check on Lindsay because he wanted her to finish showing the house first. Imagine how unprofessional that would have looked. Like, "Oh, here's my boyfriend. He's going to walk through the house with us." Like, no, that would have looked bad. So after waiting, parked around the corner from the home for about a half an hour, he texted Lindsay again, asking her if she was almost done. He went to the front door, and when he tried to open it, it was locked. This immediately set off alarm bells for Jason, who was involved in the real estate business himself, as I mentioned earlier, because he knew that no real estate agent would ever lock the doors to a home they were actively showing. Jason was frantic, and after banging on the door and calling out for his girlfriend and ringing the doorbell several times, all with no answer at all, he called the authorities. Now, I heard that the authorities were called once when he was outside the residence saying, like, "I can't get in, my girlfriend's showing the house, the door's locked, etc., etc." And then he called again once he got inside and saw what he saw. Jason and his friend didn't feel comfortable just standing around waiting for the police to arrive, knowing that Lindsay could be in some sort of trouble or possibly in need of help or assistance behind the locked door. And so his friend went around to the back of the house in order to get inside and open the door to let him in the front. He saw immediately that the back door was wide open, and after letting Jason inside, the two of them searched the home. Some say they both entered through the back door, and others say the friend let Jason in by unlocking the front door. I saw in more sources that they both entered through the rear, though, so just putting that out there. It took mere minutes for them to find the body of Lindsay Buziak. It was bloodied and lifeless in one of the upstairs bedrooms. The police got there and shut the scene down in order to protect the integrity of the investigation, and it didn't take them long to see that Lindsay had been brutally stabbed more than 40 times about her body. A very odd component to the scene was that there wasn't a single defensive wound on Lindsay's body, which means she didn't try to fight back at all. There was no sign of intimate assault or robbery either. It didn't make any sense at all and would begin to make even less as time went on. Forensics teams and detectives searched the whole house from top to bottom, but there wasn't a single sign that anyone had ever been in the residence with her at all. Even stranger still were the canine units that were brought in who couldn't detect any foreign scents anywhere inside or out of the home. They only picked up Lindsay's scent. That part really didn't make any sense to me, because how would they have had a scent for the dogs to try and pick up from people who no one knew who they were? I'm sure it's possible, but I'm really confused by that part. It's said that the couple had seemed to completely vanish into thin air. No fingerprints were found at the scene and no traces of anyone's DNA. And in fact, the entire scene was completely devoid of any usable forensic evidence at all. The first thing the investigators did was try to get a lead on who had come to see the house in the first place. They needed to figure out who the couple was who had met with Lindsay that day, because obviously those two were the prime suspects. That would prove harder than anyone could have ever imagined, and it's still a mystery to this day. The investigators started by questioning all of the neighbors near the home Lindsay was found in and had been showing that day, but there wasn't a single one of them who saw anyone leaving the scene. That was strange in and of itself because their appearance had been odd and very distinct, meaning by the descriptions given by the previous witnesses who had described seeing the man and woman with Lindsay earlier in the day, they stood out and had a very distinctive appearance. Because Lindsay only referred to the couple as the Mexicans and there was never any mention of actual names or other useful contact information or anything like that, it made things even more confusing for the investigators. They did manage to uncover that the couple had been contacting Lindsay using what's called a burner phone and that it had been purchased at a convenience store in Vancouver 3 to 6 weeks prior to the murder. The phone was never used to contact anyone other than Lindsay and was registered to the fake name of Paulo Rodriguez. A burner phone, for those of you who may not know, is a phone like the ones you can buy in Walmart or 7-Eleven, where you don't have to provide any information at all, and all you have to do is buy the phone and usually a card with a certain number of minutes on it, and when the minutes run out, you buy another card, but it doesn't go through a company and it doesn't get shut off. Therefore, they're basically like disposable cell phones that leave no trace behind of who the person who purchased them was. This was a lot more common in 2008 than it is nowadays, but they still sell burners and people still use them a lot. There's no way of knowing if someone is calling or otherwise contacting you with one either. They should make it known because it would be suspicious to some people, like a real estate agent who's being contacted by a client, and perhaps they wouldn't even get involved with their killers in the first place if they knew something shady like this was going on. With that being said, though, guys, it shouldn't always pull up red flags. And in fact, it's more of a thing for people with lower incomes. I've had many burner phones in my day. Even though the phone had been purchased up to a month and a half in advance, it hadn't actually been activated until about 48 hours before the murder. And even that lead went dead when they found out it had been registered under that fake name. I don't know how it works in Canada, but in New Jersey, you don't need an ID for a burner phone or to buy minutes. So I don't understand how they knew or what they meant by saying it had been registered under a fake name, but I digress. Things probably work differently there. Here, you just go into the store and buy it. The phone had actually been deactivated almost immediately after the murder had been committed, and apparently there was a name and address listed as owners of the phone. The name was a fake, as I said, but the address was actually a real address. It's just that it was actually a business that police knew had no connection to the murder. Every lead was going nowhere, and investigators were striking out left and right. That had to have been very frustrating for them and devastating for Lindsay's family, friends, and loved ones. The police eventually concluded that the address had more than likely been chosen at random. Investigators did end up uncovering some clues that led directly to the couple as being the killers. Remember, it had only been assumed that they were her killers because the police had no way of knowing right away and only knew that they had been there to meet her at the house. It could have been that they met her and then someone else came in and attacked her afterwards and locking the door or something like that. They didn't know for sure right away. As unlikely as that scenario was, investigators had to look at every single angle. Based on the clues eventually found, though, it seemed like the odd couple were the people who had ended Lindsay's life. Lindsay Buziak had a very close relationship with her father, Jeff Buziak, and she had expressed to him that she had reservations about taking on this specific client. She told her father that something didn't sit right in her gut with the woman and that she seemed to be a little off. Lindsay also said she felt like the woman's accent was fake. She thought the woman was forcing herself to speak that way and described it to her father as, quote, kind of Spanish, but not really, end quote. It really bothered her, according to what she explained to her father, that the woman had called her personal cell phone and not the company phone like everyone else would do if they were looking to purchase a home, especially one of that caliber. For as suspicious and apprehensive as Lindsay was, she still didn't want to back out of the deal. But it is why the normally independent and self-sufficient young woman had wanted her boyfriend to tag along and wait for her outside while she showed the home to these people. Even though the police and investigators had pretty much decided that the couple had committed the murder after all, they were still having a very hard time discerning any sort of motive as to why these two random strangers, or random people, depending on which it was, would want to kill Lindsay in the first place. After all, she had no known enemies, and it was unimaginable to those who knew her that someone would not only want her dead, but who would take her life in such a brutal fashion. Lindsay was described as someone who got along with everyone she met and being a kind-hearted and loving young woman. Authorities said the crime was definitely not a random one that just happened by chance, and it was looking more and more like a well-thought-out and planned, premeditated murder. They said it would have taken a tremendous amount of planning and thought in order to be able to pull it off as perfectly as they seem to have done. It was elaborate and extremely detailed down to the very last move. So, at the end of the day, they had to ask themselves, and those who knew Lindsay best, who would want to brutally murder this otherwise very unassuming young woman, and more importantly, why? One of the theories the investigators had was that perhaps she had been targeted by someone she knew for a professional hit. The couple certainly seemed like professionals with how effortlessly and precisely this whole thing had been carried out, leaving no trace behind. They thought that maybe she had seen or heard something she wasn't supposed to have seen or heard, and someone felt she was a threat that needed to be eliminated. Now, I saw sources that said she had confided in someone, either her father or her best friend, that she had in fact seen something that she wasn't supposed to see and she was nervous. But again, I was trying to stick with what I could fact check. So I really don't know, guys. And I just feel like even if some of the details are shaky, at least this gets people talking about it and going and researching for themselves. One investigator on the case said, quote, "There is nothing in her life, and we've conducted an extensive background check that would indicate that she was involved in anything criminal, in anything of a domestic violence relationship, and that's the most perplexing thing. It is possible Buziak's killers were under the mistaken impression she had revealed information she shouldn't have, or perhaps that she was somehow connected to a dangerous person without even knowing it. You can be a person who just works and minds his own business there in Victoria, yet through a very brief network of friends, you could be absolutely connected to people that are involved in very bad things," end quote. Think about that, guys. Think about how many people you meet on a daily basis. Think about all of our friends here, all of our gemstones, our friends in chat, our friends on YouTube, and other streams. Do we really know the ins and outs and every intricate little detail of these people's lives? We don't know that they're all good people. And in fact, I've gotten some really bad hits off of some people who have come in chat. Not any of the regulars, but still, you just don't know who someone is until you actually know them. So she could have known someone who knew someone and been somewhere, you know, it can just, when it's just theorizing and speculating, really anything is possible. I just hate that this hasn't been solved. She was responsibly going about her job. Another idea they had was that perhaps it was a personal crime and had been planned and or carried out, or at least commissioned by someone Lindsay knew and that she possibly knew very well. The first person they thought about, obviously, was her boyfriend, Jason Zalo, and the main reason was because her friends had come forward with information about Lindsay always complaining that he was jealous, possessive, and overly controlling. It was said she had been planning on breaking up with him, or at the very least that she had said she wanted to on many different occasions. However, Jason Zalo was very quickly dismissed as a suspect after they checked out his alibi and looked more closely at him as a person. I'm not sure exactly what led them to that conclusion or how they cleared him, but I'm sure they did extensive background checks and talked to those who knew him best. Also, remember he was with a friend or coworker at the time of the murder and had been sitting outside calling and texting her while she was in the house with the strange couple. There's no way he could have physically done it at the very least. They looked into many others in the community as well and came up empty. And they even did an investigation into Jason's very well-known, wealthy family that were very prominent in the community, but they were able to eventually clear all of them as well. While everyone agreed that there was no obvious person or suspect who would have wanted her dead, they also agreed that in a community as close and tight-knit as where Lindsay lived in Victoria, someone knew something, and everyone was hoping that that someone would just come forward with the information. Inspector Rob McCall, the leader of the investigation, came forward and said, quote, "This killing was very organized. There was a lot of planning and effort and forethought. These are the most complex crimes, and this is the most egregious crime, and often they can become long-term and complicated. There are people in the community who are withholding information. We know there is a bit of a cone of silence around this. It's not cool to tell on your friends. It's not cool to rat people out. Many times in a homicide investigation, you can get past that because it's also not cool to kill people. There should be some assurance to anyone that is considering speaking to the police that we're not really interested in the skeletons in your closet. We have the ability to put that aside and focus in on what we're really interested in, and that's catching these killers," end quote. So basically, he's offering immunity for anyone who knows something and isn't directly involved. They won't be penalized for withholding the information up until the point they came forward. And when dealing with people who would know things like this, I think that was kind of a good move. I mean, people who hang around with murderers or who learn of murderers, people in their orbit being murderers, sometimes are not in the best positions themselves. And I commend and applaud the investigators that they were willing to put that aside and put things aside like drugs or warrants in order to get the crime solved for the family and to get the case closed. And I really do commend them for that. Throughout the years, there have been several tips that eventually led nowhere. In 2008, though, there seemed to be information that came from one of Lindsay's closest friends who came forward with a very bizarre lead. This woman said she had been woken up in the middle of the night to her cell phone ringing, and when she looked, it was an unknown caller. She didn't recognize the number, but she picked it up anyway. When she did, there was a woman on the other end of the line speaking to her in a strange sounding accent that she just couldn't place. It dawned on her that this was similar to how Lindsay had described the accent of the woman who was suspected of eventually killing her. The friend hung up because she was scared, but after a few moments taken to compose herself, she decided to call the number back and confront the caller. She called no less than 20 times, and it just rang and rang before finally somebody picked up. That someone, rather shockingly, was Jason's mother, Shirley Zuelo. Lindsay's friend asked not only why she had called her at such a strange hour, but how she had gotten her number because the two didn't even know each other. Shirley explained that she had dialed the number by accident and had actually meant to call her secretary. She also said that she had no idea why the young woman's number was in her contacts, but that her son Jason must have added it for some reason or another. That's what Lindsay's friend said happened. So that's allegedly what happened. I've read sources that said when they checked Shirley's phone records, it actually did happen. But I have to keep it at alleged because I don't know. I couldn't find reputable sources that had that information. But just know that information is out there that she was caught in a lie. But I don't know. I'm just saying allegedly for the sake of my own livelihood here. I don't understand why the friend would have a reason to lie, but that's just my opinion. So that's what Lindsay's friend said happened, but Shirley, when questioned by the police about the matter, categorically denied that the phone call had ever even happened in the first place and said the young woman was either confused, mistaken, or flat out lying. Once the news media got a hold of this story, Lindsay's father, Jeff, wouldn't let the issue go because he believed Lindsay's friend. And I also think he wouldn't let it go because, in my opinion, from what I saw in several sources, they did find that she had called her in the middle of the night. Whether or not she spoke in this strange accent or not is I don't know, but he began lobbying for police to take another look at the Zuelos, mainly Shirley, as a suspect in his daughter's homicide, to the point where Shirley threatened to sue him for defamation of character. And I think if you look like what's happened since this case, I think she actually did. So you're going to sue the victim's father? Really? Shame on you. In my opinion, allegedly. Come for me if you want to. In 2017, there was an alleged full confession posted to a message board about the case that might have come from the actual killer, but there was obviously no real name along with it and no way of knowing who had written it. I read again, and I couldn't back it up with facts and reputable sources, that they did find out that this was a fake, but I don't know. It read, quote, "I killed Lindsay, and stupid cops will never prove it, so you all got nothing. No one gives a poop anymore anyhow, except her crybaby dad. Even her fakey girlfriends have washed it away. Typical loser chicks. Saanich cops dropped it because they can't solve poop, and were told to drop it. Cut the phony investigation. It's done. Go home, losers. Forget about her. The street always rules. B-words die every day," end quote. The message caused quite a stir, obviously, but at the end of the day, there were no answers that came from it, and it didn't bring the case any closer to getting solved or to being closed. No significant leads have ever come up, and the case is still unsolved. There's a walk that takes place every February as a sort of memorial to what happened to Lindsay, but even that doesn't get anyone any closer to finding out what happened to her or bringing her killers to justice, but I'm sure it does kind of put the case back in the spotlight, and if it's a comfort to her loved ones, her family, her father, her friends, I'm glad that they're doing it. Guys, there is so much more information on this case than I put in here because, like I said, a lot of it I couldn't fact check. Plus, I really wanted to just summarize, which is something I normally don't do. Normally, I will put every single detail, but I'm having a really busy and stressful week, and I didn't want to completely not put a video out, but I figured this is enough information here to get y'all interested so you can check it out for yourself. I encourage you all to do your own research, as always, and form your own opinions and draw your own conclusions. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you enjoyed hanging out with each other in the premiere. Check out the description box for some awesome stuff. I don't think you guys know a lot of what I do and a lot of what I offer. Links for the Kindle and paperback versions of all 3 of my books on Amazon, ways to donate to the channel, PayPal, Cash App, and my Amazon wish list gift link. My Patreon link is down there as well. JiveCreations.com for Gemma Jade and Ghost Dragon ZW merchandise. Please go and buy some merch. If you send me a picture of merch that you bought, no matter what it is, how big or small, how much or how little, the first 15 people, there's still a few slots left, I'm going to send gifts to of like crystals or, you know, the gift boxes I send with the sprays. I may send you a spray. I may give you a few months of free readings. I'm going to reward you for purchasing the merch because I just really want to get it out there. That's JiveCreations.com. On Wednesday nights, right here on this channel, you will find myself and Ghost Dragon ZW with live intuitive oracle from 7:15ish p.m. Eastern time until 11 or 11:30, or until we run out of people to read for, where I pull one oracle card from a random deck. It's totally random, chosen by your team. I do it remotely in the live stream, and I tell you what your next week or two is going to be like. It's an amazing chat. Come in just to hang out, even if you don't want a reading. It is for a recommended $5 donation, but if you don't have $5, people do it all the time. Just come in and hang out and get you a reading. It's perfectly okay if you can't donate every single time. On any given Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, every other week, you will find myself, Ghost Dragon ZW, and Miss Paranormal Pixie, Miss Lara, with Chillax and Chat talking about things and stuff. It's really up to you guys where that chat, where it all goes, where we take it, and how long we're on for the most part. On the alternate Thursdays in between at 8 p.m. Eastern, you will find conversations with Lara, the Paranormal Pixie Hour, where Lara goes on and talks about spirituality and answers a ton of your guys' questions. I've gotten such great feedback on that. Lara, thank you. You are a doll. You are a gem, and I love ya. Friday and Saturday nights at midnight, Ghost Dragons is on this channel with a live stream. Conversations with a Ghost Dragons live from the Dragon's Den. I've also gotten a ton of great feedback on that show as well. Every other Monday, so the Monday you are watching this video that premieres at 11 a.m. Eastern time, at 12 noon, it's myself and Ghost Dragon ZW with Afternoon Talk, where again, we just kind of hang out and chat and see what the chat wants to talk about. I try to have guests on as much as I can. A lot of times that's not possible, but it is what it is. Check out my channel for other interviews that I've done on other channels. You might find a channel that you really enjoy as well. We have to come together in the community and support each other. I just did Paranormal Highway. I'm doing Long Island Bigfoot. By the time you've seen this, I would have done that already. The Paranormal 60 with Dave Schrader. I've been everywhere, man. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Never accept anything less than others being kind to you. And make sure to be kind to yourself. If no one told you today, you are beautiful, you are amazing just the way you are. You can do anything you set your mind to. Do not listen to people who try to put you down. They are simply pushing their own insecurities, guilt, and shame onto you. You don't need to take that crap, so don't take it. If nobody told you today, I believe in you. I believe in you. You can do it. You got this. If you guys want to order anything from me, if you want to purchase personal intuitive oracle readings from me, I have all different kinds. If you just have questions, if you just want to chat, anything you guys need, reach out at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. I think that's all. Always go and grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.